Moin 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 moin! Hello, welcome ladies and gentlemen, Donspektor here today with another IEM review. And today I'm taking a look at I'm not sure how to describe it, another secret IEM, just because it's, pretty niche. But it's pretty interesting because it's a very interesting driver combination with 2 dynamic and 2 balanced armatures per side. And whether this thing is good or not, we will be finding out in today's review. As usual, starting off with a quick packaging, accessories and unboxing. That's the packaging. You can see it already advertises Eagle on the front, but at least they have the whole color scheme here out. That's definitely pretty good. On the side you see logos where you can use it. Here you get your specification, and then we remove that. Come to the black packaging here, closed with a magnet. That's nice. Then here the packaging itself, there is everything inside. And just a foam block for I don't know what reason. They could have just chosen a smaller package, but hey, who knows. And then let's open that and see what accessories we get. This is there's nothing else in here in case you're asking. Empty. Carrying box, carrying case, also lettered with Meaoes. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's unfortunately not the best case. It's relatively squishy and doesn't feel too well made. If you zip it open, the zipper at least is smooth enough, although again it's like shiny, so it collects fingerprints. And then we open that, and in here would be all of the accessories, including the cable. And let's first take a look what accessories we get. So we do get silicone tips of this style here. These are, you can see like very small, the small ones here, and the big ones are very big, so that's a nice difference. But there's a lot more of tips here. So we have like foam tips in S and M, and then we have these tips, which came also with my ISN IEMs, and those tips are generally pretty good. The small ones here are definitely also small enough, and they usually don't do much to the sound because tips like that are my reference tips. Because we have a medium diameter outlet, which usually helps with bass and doesn't pronounce treble or anything too much. And then you also get these here. So that's mostly it. And then you have this strap thing for the cable, and that's it. Of course, for the casing, just quickly, you have this thing where you can put your cable or other stuff in, and those are the accessories you get. So generally, I do like the accessories here. It's a good amount of tips, nice amount of different tips even. So they definitely have that nailed. Just wish the casing here would be a bit more sturdy. Okay, then today let's start with the cable before we go to the IEM. And yes, this is the cable the Eagle comes with. It kind of reminds me a bit of the one that comes with the AJ07M, which fortunately I also have here as comparison, so you can see what I mean. That is Eagle, that is AJ07M, and you can directly see this is a bit thicker, and generally, I think this is the also smoother cable. If I just do that a bit, and we remove that here, it generally stays a bit smoother than the one from the AJ07M, and I absolutely do like that. Also, what's much better than the AJ07M, the endings here are replaceable. That's why you get these two here. So it comes with 2.5 balanced, 4.4 balanced, and 3.5 non-balanced. The only issue I have with the connectors here is that this is relatively difficult to grab onto. It's slippery and shiny, collecting fingerprints, and it lacks a shape on texture to really hold onto. But this one definitely stays on. Also tight enough here is difficult to remove, which is better than, for instance, on the variations where it just slid off over time. So yes, that's nice, and you have a strain release here, but again, doesn't do much. It's too hard, it's too short. And then you go on over the the waving here, which is pretty even and pretty dense. You continue that. Come to the splitter, which again continues the trend of silver shiny stuff. And after the splitter, let's take a look at the chin slider. Chin slider here does slide so easy, doesn't stay in place, is not working at all basically, so there's some improvement potential. And then we have the cables going to the chin, which I think are pretty much the same diameter, which means they're on the thicker side of things, and as you can see, they definitely are straight, easy, smooth, very rare to use. Then let's take a look at the top here. That's the ear hook. You can see it has a pretty big bend on, but fortunately, as you can see, it's ever so slightly bent inwards, which usually helps if you have an IEM on the ear. Maybe it could be bent a tiny bit more inwards, but yeah, is totally okay and does work fine. Yeah, the only issue that I have, maybe this could be a bit too big for some, so it's a bit floppy behind your ear, but for me it wasn't too much of a problem, so yeah, okay. And then last but not least, the connector here, it has color coding, which is absolutely nice, I like that detail. And then you have this extrusion here, so you can mount it at also like recessed 2-pin connectors, which is also nice to see. And generally, yeah, this also seems to be well made. So overall, summarizing here, I think this is a pretty good cable. The only improvement potential I see here is with the plug. Give this some texture or better shape, and maybe also make the strain release actually strain release. Plus chin slider here, yeah, this is not like it's always sliding down, doesn't do anything. But generally, I like this cable, it's smooth, it's good to use, and yeah, it's good. Then next, let's take a look at the IEM itself. This, which we haven't seen so far, is the IEM. And yeah, I do like this style very much. I'm not sure how well it's visible in the camera, but the like texture, or there's like texture in the like waves in here. So that definitely is nice. And it is a pretty unique look. I just wish they would have omitted the eagle symbol and the Meaoes and the faceplate. That's a bit much. Like maybe keep the eagle, but remove the Meaoes. There is a bit too much going on one side here. And yeah, the also nice thing here is you can see this is still integrated in the resin. So this will also not just scratch off also, because yeah, it's directly in the resin. Yes. Then let's take a look here. You can directly see my fingerprints on here. This thing is a bad fingerprint magnet. Like literally everything here collects fingerprints and it's not so great. Also, when we talk about too much, why do you even print eagle on top of the IEM? It's totally unnecessary. We know it's the eagle. You can see the eagle even on here. Don't print it on here. It's too much. And we are at the top. Here, there's a pressure hole with no filtering. It's relatively big, so keep that in mind. You can definitely get some dirt in this pressure hole, which of course could damage drivers, but yeah, is at least not the biggest one. Like biggish, but not the biggest. And then the other pressure hole is here on the front, which is relatively unique. I don't think I've seen too many IEMs having a pressure hole here. I think this could be almost seen as like a front part, because there's no front vent here. And I think this helps removing the driver flags that some IEMs do have. And then the 2-pin connector is slightly angled, as you can see. It's not like really recessed, like it's partly recessed. So you can't put on like flush 2-pin connectors here, but it's also not like real recessed. And they use this kind of design to angle the thing a bit more in a downwards angle compared to the IEM side here, which is nice because that then prevents the IEM from actually hitting, or the cable from hitting your ear too uncomfortably. And I like that idea here. And then on the inside of the IEM, here you can see there's an L marking, is very well visible, so that's also nice. I maybe would still suggest color code the R and L. That still makes things easier. And then last but not least, when we talk about build, the nozzle, you can see here that's made out of aluminium, is well integrated in the shell. I don't see any issues with that here. And yeah, it's generally on the more longish side of things. Not too long though, and yeah, generally the shaping here is also not exactly semi-custom, like definitively something like the variations is like more semi-custom shaped, but still good enough. And yeah. Oh, and yeah, the grill here seems to be well glued on. I have no issues with it. It was easy to clean, so yeah, generally no problems with this IEM in terms of build quality. And then let's talk about comfort. And this is a chunky boy. I'm not sure whether it's visible in this video, but let me just show you. This is my Tin Hi-Fi P1 Max, and you can see the P1 Max was not a small IEM, but this one, like, yeah, that's like at least 3-4 millimeters taller and 2 millimeters wider, and I think it's also, yeah, it's a bit deeper as well. So this is a tall boy. And if you have small pinna, I think you will have had difficulties to get this in your ear. But nice thing about it is the nozzle is not too wide. I think it's like 6 millimeters or so at the lip and like 5.5 5 or something behind. I will throw on the right measurements. I just don't have them here in my notes at the moment. So it's not too wide the nozzle, and it's also not too long. And that then usually means it's relatively comfortable. And this combined with an angle of insertion that is 70 degrees in this angle and basically 70 degrees in the other angle as well, without any edge. Let me just show you. There's no real edge on this side, unlike the P1 Max. So it generally does fit pretty well, and it does stay safe in my ear, and it does stay comfortable in my ear, and I could wear this basically all day without any issues. Although I would maybe suggest give it a bit of a tiny bit more aggressive, semi-custom shaping around the edge here on the inside. And maybe you could even manage to shrink it a bit, ? I don't think that's possible though, because it has 2 dynamic drivers in here. But yeah, it's comfortable. Just keep in mind, this isn't big IEM, it might not fit everybody. And then after we talked about build and comfort, let's talk about isolation quickly. And is okay. You do notice it's a big shell, so it does isolate better than average, but also doesn't isolate great, which maybe is because the shell isn't too dense, or maybe because the pressure holes are a bit big. It's not the greatest isolating IEM, but it's still good isolating. And then drivability. And I don't have the spec here for at the moment. Let's see if maybe the spec sheet here tells us what we have. 103 decibels with an impedance of 10 ohm. It doesn't tell us where, at what frequency the 103 decibels is, but generally, interestingly, with just 10 ohms, I think this is not too easy to drive. I definitely did prefer it of some more powerful dongles. Just the random USB-C dongle that I had lying around here was, I don't think, good enough for this IEM. And I do prefer it, for instance, at the BTR5, UP5, or even my desktop setup. I think definitely it does get a bit better through that, which could also be because it's just the cleaner sources, and maybe this one just picks it up a bit better. But I also think compared to, for instance, the P1 Max, it takes a bit more energy to be driven to the same levels, which is interesting because the spec does not seem to indicate that. But generally, it's not too bad, and I think if you have a better dongle that doesn't have the lowest amount of power, like the iPhone dongle, I think you're totally fine. And for the matter, again, iPhone dongle is fine. It will give you basically everything you need. Maybe with a bit more power, you could get a bit better soundstage, a bit tighter bass or something. So yeah, generally I would say 80% of what this IEM is capable of, you will be getting with your random USB-C dongles. Just again, a bit more clean source does improve here. And then let's talk about sound as the main chapter. And this review will be shorter than most of my other reviews because there are issues. And I will throw on different graphs now so you can see what I mean. First, let's look at my first pair of Eagle. See that imbalance? That absolutely is not good, and it was audible. And then let's look at the replacement pair, for which I had to pay 25 euros to have it replaced because, I have to pay for shipping. Well, that's worse, right? That's way worse. And they wanted again 25 euros because I have to ship it for myself to have it replaced, to have a unit that's actually working, because this channel imbalance is horrible. It is so audible, and I can't listen to this with my second unit for more than 20 minutes or so, because as soon as you start to hear some cymbals, as there are trumpet notes, or some more fine piano notes, well, it's not working, because one side is clearly different from the other side. And even with EQ, this is so big of a difference, it basically cannot be fixed. And as you can see in the first unit, there's a pattern. This IEM here has bad QC. Really, this is not how channel matching should be. And I don't know, really, you should be able to get a much better channel balancing with cheaper IEMs. But this one is 150 euros or so, but it's bad. And this is why I cannot give it a full rating in terms of sound, because both units I got are bad. And I don't want to pay more to get another unit, which is then again bad. There clearly is a pattern visible here, and I highly, highly recommend Meaoes and Penon selling these things. Check for channel balancing. These, what you see here, this is unacceptable. The first unit was unacceptable. The second unit is even worse and more unacceptable. This, you can't sell this. This needs to be fixed. I don't know, like you can't sell an IEM that has basically 10 decibels of imbalance around a region where some people might be sensitive for. This is not working. This needs to be fixed, and I really highly recommend Penon and Meaoes fix channel balancing. Everybody who is a bit more enthusiastic will hear this difference and will tell you that's garbage, it needs to go back. And then again, it makes you look bad because you made it. So fix it and then come back. Okay, after this rant, let's still talk about what this thing generally sounds. Because yeah, as you can see, the graph is not looking great, to say it politely. So yes, general sound characteristics is very bright. Like really, there's no hiding that. It's extremely bright. And I think 90% of people will say it's too bright. And you will probably have to EQ it down by at least like 5 decibels. I want to say like past 3K, like bring it down by 5 decibels. If it accepts that in terms of EQ. And then it should be quite a bit more pleasant than it is now. So yeah, that means in turn, this definitively is breaking the fundamental to harmonic ratio, and that then means trumpets will sound horrible, some piano notes will sound really bad, guitars can also sound extremely skewed, and yeah, just it's not a pleasant experience if you really try to listen to details. I noted here in Sexy Dance from Takanaka, there is like a trumpet, or like there's trumpets going on in this song, and it sounds like really like tinny, like really bad, like something is stuck in the trumpet and it's creating like rattly sounds. And as soon as you go to any other IEM, it sounds just fine, it's nice and natural, and then you put on the Eagle and it's again horrible and you just don't want to listen to it. Other examples that I noted here is Wisp and Don't Forget to Breathe from the Brigador soundtrack. It has like also specific, I want to say like higher notes or like cymbal hits here. And those also don't work. They sound like really tinny and unnatural and just don't sound good at all. Same thing would also be here, Ashes from Yesterday. Very similar problem. So yeah, sorry, I got interrupted by a call. So yeah, generally this is definitively too bright. And it sounds like this was made by somebody who has almost had hearing damage. I don't want to say it's as bad as the T2 Evo, that was still more offensive, but it's really not good, and yeah, you really need to EQ it down to bring it to something that is more like audible, like more listenable. I don't know what the correct adjective would here be in English. However, let me point out, the graph does look worse when it actually sounding in real life. If you get songs that do not, like are mixed, I want to say a bit more warm, but generally do not like profit from having like a nice balance, but are just more like, I want to say like not the best mixed here. This can still sound good, and I think, but this IEM does really good though, to give it one praise here in sound. Low volume listening with this is really good. It's V-shaped, as you can see in the graph, like pretty damn V-shaped and with an extreme brightness boost, but on low volume you get most of the details what your songs have, and it still works. As soon as you up the volume, you want to rip it out of your ear, right? But still at low volume, it does work pretty well, and I was surprised that actually low volume is the only, or like a really good listening mod with this one. Definitively quite a bit less than usual, but it is working and it doesn't come off as too offensive. And obviously, because there's a peak around like 9 to 8K, yet also a Sibilance and After Dark from Messenger, for instance, was not great. So yeah. One positive thing though, when we talk about other technicalities, is male vocals actually had a pretty good clarity and separation going on there, and it was sometimes so good in fact that I felt myself reminded of the H40. So the titanium driver we are using here as the mid driver definitively does something, and it helps with the separation from the ceramic driver for the bass. Definitely does that pretty well, and I can praise it for that. And then, one thing though I have to mention when we talk about mids, they just have a bit weird tonality, and I think that's not what some people say in the reviews due to the titanium driver. I think it's more because it's just badly tuned, and that then again breaks the ratio from fundamentals to harmonics, and it just sounds off a bit. I noted here Gone, the acoustic version from Nothing More, sounded pretty wanky and not really correctly. It was, even before this is like acoustic, it was sharp and unpleasant, and it even had some shout, but it still had a like good separation and a good clarity going on. So yeah, it was not the worst that I've heard even at this price point. And then another positive point when we talk about sound, imaging was pretty damn good, as was Soundstage. Seriously, if you just want to do gaming, I think this is a really good choice because it's so bright, you hear footsteps pretty easily, you can hear shots pretty good, and it all has a nice directionality to it. And also the soundstage is also, at least to my ear, pretty big. So that means it also feels nice where like generally the presence in-game is pretty good. And yeah, last but not least, let's talk quickly about bass. I think bass was pretty good defined. Not the best, like still planars definitely do better here, but it has a good texture, it has a good speed, and yeah, I have heard way worse bass and even more expensive IEMs. For instance, the 840 that I mentioned before has worse quality bass, but more quantity in bass. So yeah, then let's come to the conclusion. Can I recommend the Eagle? Nope. Nope. The whole QC is so bad, absolutely never. You should not buy the Eagle in any way, shape, like never. QC and the channel balancing is not worth. Like, don't risk it. Buy something else. But generally, the driver configuration here with one ceramic dynamic for bass, one titanium dynamic for mids, and then 2 BAs for treble. I like that. I think that could have potential if you do it right. And maybe if you want to do a higher end IEM, maybe still throw an electrostatic on top, or maybe change the BA setup a bit. I think this generally would have potential, and I like to see companies experimenting with it. So I will give Meaoes absolutely praise for trying it, because this has potential, and I just want them to do better in the future. And yeah, then I think that sums it pretty much up because the tuning here, as you can see, is also graphing thrown in. It's out of whack, doesn't work. They also need to fix that a bit. Even if I want to keep like something like this in terms of just the peaks and so, it's still too much. You need to reduce it by at least 3 to 4 decibels to make it somewhat workable for the majority of songs. So yes, that's it, the review of the Eagle, and yeah, hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, if you have criticisms, please let me know. And with this, Donspektor